In a society that profits from your self-doubt, loving yourself is a rebellious act. Would you agree? Yes. Yes. So, what is your definition of love? Have you ever thought of that?
Yeah, baby.
Can you apply that to yourself? Can you apply that to yourself? So, welcome to an entire month of love. February. Our theme for February is living in love. Living in love. And we're continuing, of course, our exploration of a year of joyous living. That's our theme for the entire year of 2021. And our spiritual practice, as I mentioned earlier, is journaling each and every day with the Joyous Living Journal that we have available in the bookstore. This month, of course, we're celebrating Valentine's Day, that hearts and cards and flowers and candy and all that sort of day if you're in a relationship and honoring that relationship. But if you're not, do you just bypass the holiday? No, no, no. We celebrate love. We celebrate the universal nature of love itself because we know that God is love, right? God is love. And this month, we're going to look at ways that we can better recognize this universal quality within ourselves and all of our relationships. So in this series, we're going to be exploring self-love, relationship as spiritual practice, the power of love, and the mystical art of forgiveness. So it should be a fun series. Today, it all begins within. That's my talk. It all begins within. We're going to dive into self-love. So we're going to start there with this series. But what is self-love? We hear it thrown around a lot, but really, what is self-love? How do we practice it? Is it selfish, narcissistic, braggadocios? Love that word, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. But today I want to look at three keys to developing healthy self-love in our lives. SelfWorth, SelfRespect, and SelfCare. Okay? I want to start with a kind of an overview, though, of self-love before we jump into those other three keys. It is generally defined as having regard for one's own happiness or advantage. Having regard for ourselves, right? And we've all heard these sayings. You have to love yourself more. Anybody ever heard that? You've got to love yourself more. Or if you only loved yourself more, that wouldn't have happened to you, right? Or the one we might hear most frequently, which is you can't love another person until you love yourself, right? We've all heard that one. Psychologist Dr. Deborah Kushaba says self-love is not simply a state of feeling good. It is a state of appreciation for oneself that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love is dynamic. It grows through actions that mature us. When we act in ways that expand self-love in us, we begin to accept much better our weaknesses as well as our strengths, have less need to explain away our shortcomings, have compassion for ourselves as human beings, struggling to find personal meaning, and are more centered in our life purpose and values, and expect living fulfillment through our own efforts. Doesn't that sound wonderful? A wonderful space to love from, starting there. She says that self-love is not just about feeling good, but it's certainly a byproduct of it, isn't it? And we mature in self-love through daily actions. Those daily choices and actions and activities that we make is how we grow and mature in self-love. So in Science of Mind, we talk about this thing called the law of reflection, which simply means it's an image given back to us, right? And we know that the way that we believe in our activities and so forth is reflected back to us in our life. And we've always said, if we want to know what we're thinking about, just look around our life and see what's being reflected back to us. And we can see then why the first key, self-worth, is important. Because if we're not feeling worthy or believing ourselves worthy, reflection in our life is not going to be very worthy, right? It seems that self-worth is a big deal, and a negative self-worth is predominant in a lot of folks on our planet. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I hear that a lot, where we don't feel like we're worthy of the spiritual magnificence that we teach that we are here, and we have limitations that we have in our lives through believing we're simply not worthy for more than that, right? We've talked in our mental equivalence class about that idea of limitations being self-imposed. So I think a lot of it, though, has to do with the negative programming that we receive from the outside and the external world. And there's really a term for this, believe it or not. It's called negative bias. And negative bias simply means that we have a bias, a preference for negative things over positive things. Now, my religious scientists in the room and online are going, not us, right? But that is predominantly the way the human mind works. Science tells us it's through evolution, and the way the brain protects us is having us be on the lookout for negative things and dangerous things. It kind of makes sense, but we don't really live in that age anymore. So negative bias is something that we have, and I think we can understand through that the success of media. Most media is so negative, focusing on those negative stories, right? It's because the bulk of the human population tunes into that, pays attention to that, talks about that over the water cooler and all that stuff, right? But what happens is we begin to internalize that, believe that that's it. We have this narrow vision of negativity and believe that, that's us too. It must apply to me too. We begin to internalize that. And sadly, most people don't realize that they're doing it. Now, in science of mind, if you've been around for a while, we find that we start to turn that down a little bit. It doesn't resonate quite as loudly anymore with us. Our negative bias is shifting a little bit, because the science of mind, of course, is a very affirmative, positive teaching. And when we're no longer in alignment with that bias for the negativity, our bias begins to become more positive. Some might call it Pollyanna-ish, right? We've heard that. Many of us have been called that. But that's what happens when we begin to have a positive bias. So our self-worth is really, though, tied to the beliefs we have about ourselves, isn't it? It's an inside thing, more so than the outside thing. And those frequently have been provided to us by the external, though, haven't they? Through circumstances, or people have projected onto us things, even as small children. It's like our reading said about letting go of those childhood stories. They're not true, and many of them are not. So I guess my question today is, when was the last time you looked at your stories, you looked at your beliefs, to see if that's still true? Is that still true? In the 10th grade, at the end of trigonometry class, the teacher, we're a very small class, and the teacher says, okay, who's going to be taking calculus next year? And several people said yes, yes, yes. And I said, I'm not going to do that because that's not part of my program going forward. I don't need calculus. And she said, well, that's probably just as well. I don't really know how you got through Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, and trigonometry, so I don't think calculus is really for you. And I went, oh, you're right. Thank you. And for many, many years after that, my story was, I can't do math. I can't do math. I actually said that. I affirmed that. I affirmed her opinion for many, many, many years. Until one day, I had an aha moment where I said, now wait a minute. I use math every day in my business life. I completed Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, and trigonometry. I graduated in the top of my class with honors. What is she talking about? I can do math. But I carried that for so long. What stories are you carrying? Where are you saying, I can't? I can't. Don't be like me. Ernest Holmes, our founder and author of The Science of Mind, said in his book, A New Design for Living, you are a child of God, and therefore you should have a very high opinion of yourself. No foolish self-conceit, but a reverent understanding of your wondrous relationship with God. Tell yourself over and over again that the quality of love lies within you and that it is only natural for you to be expressing it. Only natural for you to be expressing it. When we remember that we are the sons and daughters, the children of God, that we are in, through, and as that is the experience of our life, and we begin to tell ourselves better stories about who we are, about our worth, we can begin to shift that perspective, that negative self-worth perspective, into the positive, and drop those old stories, have our own aha moments of awakening to the spiritual magnificence that we truly, truly are. So our next key, another key to greater self-love, is self-respect. Self-respect, which is loving ourselves enough to honor our agreements, keep our commitments to ourselves, make healthy choices, make life-supporting and sustaining decisions. It's acting in our own best interest, isn't it? It is choosing what's best for us, what's right for us, as opposed to what's easy or habitual, as opposed to what's feels good, looks exciting. I want to go do that. That sounds exciting. I'm going to tell a funny story that I hadn't planned to tell, because it's true. Last week, Ron and I had the weekend off, and we played. It was wonderful. We played all weekend. And at one point, we were talking about what we were going to do for the Super Bowl, right? Nobody's having Super Bowl parties or anything. I said, gosh, wouldn't it be fun to fly to Vegas? I got points on Southwest. I'm going to do it. I booked a reservation to Las Vegas for the day, up and back, leave right after service, fly up there, have a wonderful time at a Super Bowl party, fly back home. Wouldn't that be adventurous? Oh my. Next morning, woke up and went, what were we thinking? I called him and I said, I don't think we want to do this. The last time we went to Vegas, we said we wouldn't go back for at least 10 years. We did not have that, it was just crazy. And then with COVID and the way things, it's like, what are we thinking? That's just the craziest thing on the planet. Fortunately, we could cancel the reservation. But it looked really exciting at the time. So I do that, right? I'm impulsive sometimes. And what we're talking about here with the self-respect was the morning decision later of saying, no, that's not a good idea, canceling that flight. So it's about acting from what's best for us. It's about staying present. It's about staying present to ourselves rather than seeking approval or giving away our power to others. That's the self-respect. When we can say no thank you, that doesn't support my higher good. We demonstrate self-respect through our daily actions and choices and see that reflected back to us as the experience of my life. So January, first Sunday of January, was it the 3rd? We set some intentions, right? Had the big burning bowl ceremony, got the box full of intentions. How are you doing with them? How are you doing with your intentions? I'm seeing some nods. That's good. That's good. Anybody fallen off the wagon of your New Year's resolutions yet? Don't have to raise your hand. Statistically, a large percentage of people do, in this first 90 days, stop paying attention to their intentions. Well, that's why we're reminding you every week when you come here about those intentions, so that we can keep them fresh before us to stay focused on them, because focus is key to bringing those into our life. But if we do slip, if we do fall off that wagon, so to speak, the key is getting back and starting over without beating ourselves up and being critical. That's the whole statement. It's not just getting back on. It's the idea of not beating ourselves up. That is respecting ourselves. And in this case, what we can also do is use the third key, which is self-care. Self-care. When you love yourself fully, you take better care of yourself, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. We honor this body temple, all of it, and we care for it. Acts of self-care, the common ones we talk about: a hot bath, a massage, taking yoga, going for a nice walk, things like that to practice self-care. But it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? It goes deeper than that. It's about care of the physical, but it starts inside, like everything else does. It starts inside with us, our belief about what we deserve. Some people really struggle with taking good care of themselves, with pampering themselves. I can't do that. I can't do that. But it's very much like we've all heard on the airlines: put your oxygen mask on first or you can't help others. We try to give it all away, and I'm not worthy to do that for myself. So you can see how all these are all connected to each other around our self-love. And self-care is important for that, to replenish ourselves, to take care of ourselves, and to look at the beliefs that we have. So the idea is not criticizing ourselves. It's to be loving and kind to ourselves. Kind to ourself in our mind. And that's really what self-care is really getting control of that inner critic, really watching our self-judgment, really hearing ourselves when we say negative things about ourselves. If you ever say, "Oh God, I'm so stupid," or "That was so stupid." I stopped saying that a long time ago. About the time I figured out what the trigonometry teacher was saying. But anyway. But those are things that, the power of our word is powerful. And to be very aware of those words that we say about ourselves, the thoughts we have about ourselves, the way we criticize ourselves, and to be loving and kind to ourselves. Okay, you set an intention, you slipped, let's get back on. You can do this. Be encouraging, be loving, be kind. Like I say, we can get ourselves pampered and commit to green exercise and healthy eating, but if we're beating ourselves up, if we're criticizing ourselves, talk about or think about things negatively about ourselves, we're not practicing self-love. We're practicing some self-abuse, frankly. So knock it off. Become aware of how you talk to yourself. Practice loving kindness. One of the things that I do is, if I catch myself doing that, thinking or speaking, is to say, I stop and go, "No, that's not true. That is not true." And then I just go super positive, affirmative, to dilute that negativity. Just over the top positive about what I was talking negatively about, to dilute that negativity that I have put out there. And with anything, it takes practice, but that's how we can transform our thinking and transform our lives. We've got to find those practices that work for us to make those shifts. Okay. So those are the 3 keys to growing our self-love: self-worth, self-respect, self-care. And with everything that grows, it grows from the inside out, doesn't it? And so do we. So our self-love is going to grow from the inside out. And whatever's going on within us on the inside is eventually going to spill out in our surroundings. So we'd rather have it look like a love spill than a toxic waste spill, right? So let's take a look at some of our spiritual practices for this week and see how we can use our tools for growing our self-love. And again, don't forget, as Diane said, sign up for Mindful Monday if you're not already on that list. Those of you at home, you can send me an email and I will sign you up for that. That comes out every Monday. It's just a brief email that gives you the talking points from today, the spiritual practices in detail, and the quotes that I've used. So you're welcome to sign up for that. Our first principle is self-love, and it's practice being mindful. Practice being mindful. When we have more self-love, we tend to know what we think, feel, and want. We have a tendency to know ourselves, right? We're mindful of who we are and we act accordingly. We walk our talk. We walk our talk rather than reacting to what others want for us. We have enough self-love for ourselves to stand in our own truth. Mindfulness means that we're aware. So our practice this week, I'm going to invite you to contemplate what you think. What are you feeling? What do you want? What do you want? And ask yourself, is my life reflecting what I want it to be? Number 2 for self-worth is to take conscious action. Take conscious action. Self-love allows us to turn away from the thing that feels good, is exciting, or simply a bad habit, and to choose what we need to stay strong, to stay centered, and moving forward in the direction of our dreams or our intentions. By staying focused, we turn away from the automatic behavior patterns, right? That's how we change habits. Habits are automatic behavior patterns. We have to stay focused in order to make that change. Those things will keep us stuck in the past and out of self-love. So focus is a key ingredient. So when you're facing decisions this week, and like we talked 2 weeks ago, we face decisions every day, all day. So when you face decisions this week, consciously choose to act from awareness rather than from want or impulse. And I mean, think about if you're on a new food plan and you're out and about running errands and you get yourself so hungry that all you can do is drive through the drive-through and grab a quick snack, right? So that's not being aware, is it? If I knew I was going to be out running errands and I was not going to be able to stop for a healthy meal or go home for a healthy meal, I'm not going to allow myself to get that hungry to where I'm just ravenous. I've got to have something to eat. So it's that idea of being aware and being prepared for ourselves. So be present to your decisions this week. Number 3 is self-respect and to set and honor self-respecting boundaries. Now, boundaries we know can become limits, right? Boundaries can become limits. These can become prison walls for us if we're not careful with them. Setting a healthy, self-supportive boundary is respecting ourselves and this life that we have. This life that we have. We love ourselves more when we set limits and say no to people or experiences that deplete or harm us in any way, right? We've all had those people in our life. And sometimes saying no to them is the healthiest thing that we can do for ourselves. This week, set and keep your agreements with yourself. Change your thinking. Change a habit that no longer serves you. Just some little habit that you recognize. You know, I come home and I drop all my mail and whatever's there on the dining room table. At the end of the week, it's just piled up, to the point of having to push things over to be able to sit down to have a meal. That's a bad habit, right? Because it's just a habit. It's a bad habit that can be changed. So focusing on that, setting that boundary where that's not going to be the case. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. It could be something that simple. So change that habit. Contemplate where you might need to set a boundary in order to love yourself more. Number 4 under self-care is to practice good self-care for yourself. When we take better care of all of our needs, when we nourish ourselves daily, healthy activities, daily spiritual practice, yes, and we have enough sleep and exercise and rest and fun and good relationships around us so we feel supported, we feel filled up. So notice this week where it's not happening in your life. Where are you feeling depleted? A lot of us are feeling isolated more now because of the restrictions, and we're not feeling like we have enough social interaction and fun and relationships. And that can be tough. But we need to find ways that we can connect, either outside spaced or on the Zoom or some of the electronic calls and things, but ways that we can connect, because that's such an important component for human relationships, is being together. So pick one thing this week and that you can do differently to intentionally practice some good self-care. So our spiritual practices are those daily workouts that we use to transform our mind. And just like our physical workout changes our body, our spiritual workout changes our lives. So if it is true that you cannot love another person until you love yourself, then it's vitally important for each one of us and the health and well-being of our planet and everyone on it, that we learn to love ourselves first. Ernest Holmes tells us in his book, Can We Talk to God? If we make ourselves receptive to the idea of love, we become lovable. To the degree that we embody love, we are love. This is why people who love are loved. It does not pay to hate. Hate is a human idea. Love is our divine nature. And this applies to everyone, not just in this room, not just listening online, everyone, right? And we must be receptive to love and embody it in order to become it. You are loved, and lovable. And so it is. Would you join me for an affirmative prayer, please? As we recognize that there is one source of all that is, of the very breath that we take, the beat of our heart, the circulation of our blood, we recognize that that one life is God. It is the infinite power, presence of all that is, of the universe, of all that's ever been, all that ever will be. It is infinite in its nature. It is loving. It is generous. It is intelligence and wisdom. It is simply everything that is. And I know that I am a manifestation of it, that I come from that one source, that one substance of the divine has created this life I live. And I am that love and harmony, that intelligence and wisdom. And as I know this for myself, I know that for each one of us. I know that we are all divine expressions of God, spirit in form. We are the light. We are the leading edge of consciousness, each one of us, as God lives, moves, and has its being through us. And so knowing that, I know the perfection of life unfolding as each one of us, as we believe. For we have been immersed in this system of creation in which our beliefs govern our lives. And we know too that we can change them, that we can open to the greater good, to the more expression of life, of love, of joy, of peace, of harmony as us, by simply deciding to do so. And how blessed we are as the leading edge of consciousness to know this truth and to use it. As Ernest said, there's a power for good in the universe and we can use it. I know for anyone that has anything on their heart today that they are seeking prayer for, as they lift that into the consciousness of this prayer, that whatever needs to be healed is healed, that whatever needs to be revealed and clarified, that clarity comes with ease. I know financial flow and abundance to each and every one as we open to the prosperity of the universe through our lives right here, right now. And I know loving relationships in each and every life. For we're here for connection. And so it is with a grateful heart, filled with joy and so much gratitude, that I release this prayer into the action and the activity of the law, knowing that it is done. It is so. And so it is.
So it is.